Episode number 49 of the Monday Morning Worship Leader. Rule followers and rule breakers.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures give His glory. Praise Him, all God. Praise Him, because praise Him above. Praise Him above the heavens. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Well, hey guys, Brother John here. So good to be with you. I'm telling you, we've had nothing but snow and very, very cold weather this week, and it's finally good to be in worship on Sunday. We had to cancel, I had to cancel rehearsal upon rehearsal. Everything on Tuesday was canceled. Everything on Wednesday was canceled. Thursday, we were kind of back and running, but yet still in the single digits. And that is, again, we're in the United States, so that's Fahrenheit to our international listeners who listen to the podcast. So it was good to get back into church, really good to be talking to you today, and just good to have this time to take a look at some different aspects of worship. If you don't know me by now, I'm John Francis, and I am a worship leader. Wound up getting my PhD in church music, and so worship research has been something that I have enjoyed, and it's just become a passion of mine. Not only research for the here and now, but research in the early church and years and years and years ago, because I think there's something that's really pretty significant when we take a look at how our elders worshiped. But that's not where I'm going to go today. And in fact, I'm really going to talk to you a little bit. This is on the management level. And one of the things that, and I've gotten a couple of comments about the podcast, and I hope you feel this way too. They were positive comments saying, sometimes you talk about the theological, sometimes the historical, sometimes the philosophical, and then sometimes just the very practical. And I'm going to touch on kind of the philosophical practical today, because I think this is a really important aspect of worship leadership and an important aspect of leadership in general. And what I'm going to talk to you today is something that I really haven't researched. I've just found it to be true, and I've found it to be true in myself as well as in others. One of the easiest things that we can do when we take a look at people and we observe people is that we can divide them into two camps. There's this and there's that. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. Please forgive me if that's something that you find appalling. And I sometimes do, because I think that there are lots of shades in between. But I do believe that there are people that have biases in being rule followers and rule breakers, and they both exist in Christianity. We have to have both of them in a lot of ways. And, it's almost like, but it's not the same comparison as a Mary and Martha. A Martha can be too involved in the work to really appreciate the presence of the Lord. And then we have Marys who could be so in appreciation of the Lord that they actually never do the Lord's work. And the comparison I make there is for people, and this sounds horrible, and I don't mean to go off on this tangent, but people that do Bible study after Bible study after Bible study after Bible study with their women's group or their men's group, and they never really do anything with it, And so we have those kind of people, and it's always where we've kind of got to find ourselves in the middle. Rule followers and rule breakers, and you probably have them both in your choir, in your praise team, in your praise band, and your orchestra. And I'm telling you, it depends on where you come from. How you communicate with them is very, very important. I'm going to give you a very honest assessment of myself for a second, and I'm going to be transparent, because I am not a rebellious person by nature, but I am a rule breaker. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not someone who simply just tries to do something that isn't kosher or that isn't acceptable. No, I just have to kind of be told why the rule is important before I follow it. And even then, I'm going to have a hard time with it. I will work on it, because I know that's what I'm supposed to do as a believer. But at the same time, it's not my nature. There are people in your ministry that are rule followers. In a lot of ways, sometimes that's a more dangerous place to walk because they really think that they're right all the time. And they also believe with their whole heart that the rule breakers are being wrong and they're just being less spiritual than they are. Now, why is this concerning? When you set aside rules for your praise team, for your praise band, you have to keep that rule breaker, rule follower in mind. What brought this up is a couple of years ago, I had a former student of mine say, hey, listen, I have got these rules for my praise team, and I just want you to take a look at it. And I did, and they were very well spelled out, and this person is a rule follower. And I said, well, this is great, but what happens when someone breaks the rules? And he said, well, then they don't get to do this, they don't get to do X, Y, and Z. I said, but what if you need them to do it that day? And he said, well, okay, that's a good point. Point to be made here is the way you communicate with these different types of people in your ministry is very, very important. You cannot just simply assume that a rule breaker type is going to cotton well to the rule following rules. And so if you have anything, and don't get me wrong, you need to have rules, but they probably need to be a little more general in nature than you would like to have them be. That way you can help shepherd your rule breakers along with your rule followers to have the best impact for the kingdom. I had a friend of mine one time, and he said this. He said, when you have a problem in ministry, the easiest thing to do is to make a rule. And he's absolutely right. The easiest thing you can do is to make a rule, but it is rarely the right thing to do. The right thing to do is create and maintain and cultivate relationship. That's going to speak above everything else that you do in ministry, is that you cultivate that relationship. That way you can figure out how you have to be with other people. I hope you find those to be good words. Okay, well, I'm I just read a book. And in fact, this book is a read you can do in your lunchtime. I mean, it is a very short book. And it may rub you the wrong way. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It is Strange Lyre, Lyre, Strange Lyre, the Pentecostalization of Evangelical Worship. And it's by David DeBruyn. And this book is representative of a movement that we're seeing in a lot of Baptist circles, and that is the covenant renewal worship format. And so what this is about is really about bringing your worship to a place that it's not about necessarily having an experience, but instead God's people coming together to renew the covenant relationship every Sunday that the Lord has placed before them. And so DeBruyn's book really does do a good job. It is a biased job, but everyone writes with a bias. It does a good job, though, to bring out the important points of how evangelical worship has been changed by Pentecostalization. And I'm going to really encourage you younger folks that listen to the podcast to read this book, simply because you may really think that worship has always been the way it is right now. And it hasn't. And so this is a good historical perspective, but it's also a good book to make you scratch your head and go, And by the way, I will be touching on the covenant renewal form of worship very soon in this podcast, and I hope you'll listen. Just keep listening, in fact, because that's it for today. And so I want to encourage you, my brothers, my sisters, we are not rock stars. We are servants. I'll talk to you next week. Okay, we have two ordinances in free worship. We have the ordinance of the baptism, and we have the ordinance of the Lord's Supper. Put them together to enhance the symbolism.
Next time on the podcast.